Hello, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show. There's so much going on, guys. So this week's blog post is about discovery. Let's put that aside for a sec. We also, last week, we put out a call, and I'd love to screw this down for who would like to, good morning, Steve, who would like to participate in the agenda committee, the agenda setting committee for the summit. Summit's on, those of you out there in the sphere, and you're going to be hearing from us now this week. Catherine's working on it about registering. We are going to commit to the Charleston, or we've committed. It's the nice thing about pushing accountabilities onto someone else's desk. I believe we've committed to the aquarium to have our group dinner catered by crew at the aquarium, and that'll be fun.
You're not serving fish.
Of course we're serving fish. When you come to the door, everyone gets a gaff hook or a spear hook.
This is going to be a new, kids movie. A bunch of adults sitting in the aquarium eating fish, and all the fish are up at the window looking at it going, what the hell? My friend down there.
Mom, is that you? No, we'll do it at the aquarium, and we'll serve chicken. And the aquarium, I assume that none of you have been to the...
I have.
You have. It is. Isn't it cool?
It's spectacular. We have actually been in the back of the aquarium because my son won a little contest while we were there, and we got to go up and see them go up on the top and feed all the fish from the... Awesome. It was a spectacular experience. It's a great place.
It is a great place. It's not the largest by volume tank, but it is the deepest saltwater tank. Think in North America. Atlanta is the biggest. This one is it's really, so that'll be fun. But the agenda, and we have several people who have said, me, pick me. I'd love to lock that down and start cranking and start doing the harder work. Although it's not until October, it's already here.
Does it start on the 6th or is there a pregame ahead of that?
We will of course do, a lot of people come in for the weekend. So the hotel block is 10 days. It starts, I believe, on Friday night prior and runs through the weekend after. The conference itself, the formal conference, starts at 1:00 on Monday the 6th and ends at noon on Wednesday the 8th. We have a huge ballroom, guys. It gives us a lot of possibilities, a lot of flexibilities. We also have a breakout room. So a lot of space. Now, on Monday morning, a lot of people come in beforehand, people who happen to like good food, good wine. Eric, I'll see you on the 14th.
Yeah.
So we'll, on Monday morning, actually, Mike and I are talking about doing a workshop. The workshop, if it turns out to be, and you guys, we have a committee, right? So I'm not dictating. Here's an idea. We might get a practice workshop, the advisory team, right? Wealth advisors and growth advisors, a growth advisor and an investment banker, different professions collaborating. And what does that best practices? Let's collectively identify best practices, confirm them, and then practice. What does that look like, feel like, and what are the results? And then we'll circle back around and critique it.
George,
Yes.
Suggestion.
Please.
Something that works really well at the EPI Summit, I really enjoy it, and I think a lot of people get a lot out of it, is put together a case study before the summit, have everybody read the case study, do the case study as that pre-workshop, and then have a panel of people talk about what they would have done. In other words, you get it, it's interactive because instead of coming in and showing up and then you tell us what's, walk us through something, we've had some time to think about it and listen to it, the audience has, and now you can pull it apart and say, here's what we saw, what did you see? And everybody can contribute to the conversation rather than just sitting and asking questions because they're reacting to what they just heard, right?
Absolutely, Eric. I love that idea. We'll put it to the committee.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get out of making all the decisions. Good morning. Thrilled you joined us. Clay's like, I didn't know.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. Okay, Eric, I love that idea.
Yeah, just a thought. And, I'm sure as a community, we'll put our own spin on it. But the underlying idea of a case study and allowing people to get prepared for it ahead of time and think about it, I think adds some value.
It's interesting, Eric, if I might. So we're going to do the pre-workshop. We also have always done a half-day workshop during the event, right?
Yeah.
At least one. And from your perspective, would what you've just described be best done as the pre-workshop and then presented to the plenary, or done by the plenary with comments? What are your thoughts?
I'm sorry, do it as the workshop during or do it as the workshop before? I guess you have to give more feedback because I've been to one of these and I skipped out early, right? Because I couldn't stay for the whole thing. Does everybody show up for the pre-workshop? If you're going to do a case study and ask people to do the homework, do it during so that everybody can participate. Because the people, maybe only some show up for the workshop and then everybody's there for the whole, you got to decide what you want in the sort of smaller crowd and what you want in the whole crowd, right?
Yeah. And I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. I think most people participated in the pre-show.
Yeah, again, I'm just speaking from, I know EPI does pre-conference stuff, and sometimes those are less attended just because people are still coming into town. Some people are traveling during that time or whatever, just getting there.
One thing that's for sure that I'm pulling out of that is the pre-workshop, we should reserve time to share the key takeaways with the plenary.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
What else is on people's minds?
Everybody else is thinking tax day, but I'm thinking it's my wife's birthday today.
There we go.
She married a CPA and her birthday's April 15th.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. That's right.
And she's over in Grand Rapids visiting her parents since Sunday. We went out to dinner last weekend. So
nice. Did you have a chance to check out? So Eric's coming into town coincidentally in the middle of May. Eric, did you have a chance to look at that stuff? Okay, good.
I took a look at the places to stay, and I started to look at the hotel or at the restaurants. I haven't gotten all the way through them. Yeah,
it's tax day, dude. Maybe next week.
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, I don't do any taxes, guys. That's one area I do not do. But my brethren are quite busy today.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Yeah. What's up Steve? What's up in the deal space or Chad? How are you? What are you guys seeing deal wise?
Great question.
Is activity down? Is activity up? Is it activity about the same?
I would say
There's a lot of people in idle mode right now.
Yeah.
So Steve, you're experiencing up, and Chad, you're experiencing idle.
and of course, it all depends on what you have to offer. As you guys know, there's popular businesses and not so popular.
Chad had it's the first guy to drop a deal with an NDA in the community and say, okay, how can we collaborate on this? So thank you, Chad.
Yeah, that was really cool, Chad. I saw that also.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, look, this is a, pretty big deal. And I thought I would share that in hopes that, who knows? I mean, there may be somebody out in the community that has a buyer for it. And I'm certainly willing to make it worth their while and, co-broker a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, smart.
Yeah.
That was cool. What are you guys seeing as the resistance, Chad? What are you seeing as the resistance? Is it the interest rates? Is it just the general uncertainty? What is it that you see people idling for? Can you capture?
Well, I think a big part of it, and it is the rates. Now, a lot of my deals right now are in that $2, $3, $4 million, $5 million range. And when you've got a 9, 10, 11, 12% interest rate, sometimes it can be pretty tough to, support that debt service. So a lot of people are waiting to see if the rates go down. My feedback to that is, look, whether they do or don't, this is something that you're wanting to do, right? So we just got to get really creative on how to get across the finish line.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the larger deals I've worked on has not been necessarily the case because it's a completely different type buyer.
Yeah.
Some of the smaller deals, right?
The financial buyers are the ones that are the problem because they got to they often got to finance the whole deal, where the strategic buyers are often coming with capital or the ability to leverage beyond the one deal. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sure like Chad, my inbox, I get a handful of emails every day from professional buyers looking for businesses.
Now that part of it, no, absolutely not. No,
Yeah.
I mean, from a buyer's pool, that has not slowed down at all. Now,
Yeah.
you ask just a few questions to some of these buyers, some pre-qualifying questions, and they have no clue what you're talking about. That probably tells me they're just tire kickers or competition or who knows? But yeah, as far as the buyer pools, I mean, I've got 26,000 in my CRM right now, 26,000 buyers and sellers in my HubSpot CRM. So that continues to grow. I would like to get a couple more in the pipeline, some of the, bigger deals. I don't know, Steve, about you, but I mean, I've worked on, I think the largest I've worked on is $44 million deal. Oh, well, actually, I take that back. I had a $140 million deal one time that we were working on. And so I don't know what size businesses you work with, Steve, but
Well, I haven't hit 140 million for sure. Love to.
I had one deal I worked on that was bigger than that, and that was when I worked for Johnson Controls. We sold $1 billion business, but that was an exceptional deal. We don't see those all the time. Hey, I got a different question, and it's related to this. I run into people who are coming out of school looking for jobs. I just had lunch yesterday with a guy whose job went away, but it applies to the people who are looking for deals to buy. It also applies to all of us when we're out networking. And one of the things this guy at lunch yesterday said is, look, my skill set, I could do anything. I could go out and do, he was a CFO. I could work in any industry. And my standard comment to him was, you're not helping me help you. If you would give me some sort of, if you tell me, you could say to me, I could work in any industry, but my preference is this industry and that industry. And I always give the example, look, if we're trying to set up lunch, I literally eat anything. So I could say to you, pick anything, but that's no help in picking lunch. But I could say, I could eat anything, but I really like steak and I like sushi. I like sushi too. Let's go to a sushi place. That one bit of, you don't have to limit yourself, but you can share preferences or something. Anybody, what are your guys' experiences with helping people understand that it's hard to, when a buyer comes to you and says, I could buy anything, what do you got on your shelf, Chad? Right? What deals do you got? That's not helpful, right? Like, what are you looking for? What is it that you want to buy and why do you want to buy it? Anybody else have this problem?
all the time. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty frequent. I mean, early on, Eric, I would jump at every single opportunity, have lunch with them, and I finally realized that a lot of these folks, they're so early in the process, they really haven't even had time to think about what they would want, right? And I've built, a series of, due diligence questions, basically, look, almost asking for their resume.
Yeah.
And I asked them what are their hobbies, so it's a whole series of questions.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I tell them is, well, they ask me the same question. Well, what do you have on your shelf? I don't know. Here you go. Here's a list of industries, right? But then I really follow up and say, well, based on what you're telling me, right, we know that 80% of businesses they will not be listed. So if you would like to have a different conversation and engage us, I'll go find you something.
Right.
Right? If you want to engage in our services, I'll go find you a handful of companies that we can work through together. And here's the fee for that.
Do you get a lot of takers on buy side?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'll say, quite frankly, in Milwaukee, people are, what's the right word? They're careful with their money. And so they don't tend to pay for buy side, or they want the hand, they'd rather call Chad or Steve or Eric and say, hey, what do you know about deals? What's in your pipeline? They want to do the freeway rather than the,
I quit doing that.
yeah.
You know, it's interesting, guys. If we think about this conversation
Yeah.
and apply it to our advisory businesses and the way we face the face we put out to
Yeah.
the market.
This is where I was going to.
Yeah, and awesome, Eric. You know, the power of niching yourself. And I would just make one comment. I've sat at the middle of this spider's web for a very, very long time now. And the people who niche themselves, I hear it time and again, they attract other industries, right? I only work with plastics, whatever, manufacturers. They attract other people who identify the problem because they're out there talking about, you know, I work with manufacturing companies and I saw this problem. And you may have a furniture retailer. It's like, well, I'm not in manufacturing, but man, do we have that problem. And so the power of niching yourself, and actually it's the opposite. It de-risks in ways that are surprising. Eric, comments?
You know, it's an interesting thing. Just in the last 2 weeks, I've had 3 different people talk to me about the book Range, which talks about not actually specializing too early and making sure that you get a broad enough base so that you can understand. And that's my experience. I had 20 years of corporate where I did a lot of different things. And now in the second half of my career as a consultant, I have all that broad experience that I can apply into specific things, right? So I think we talk about, picking, whether you like niche or niche, picking a niche and going with it. I think that's all well and good. I think there's a lot of work to find out what that place is, right? And sometimes you got to do some general work and try some different things to find where that slot is that's going to work for you. But I do agree. And my example I always use is you don't have to limit yourself where you can you don't have to say, I only work in this area. You could say our preferred areas are these 2 or 3 areas or 1 area, and I'll still do other work, because people often at the start are afraid to go down that narrow path right away.
I believe it was the book Built to Sell or Build to Sell, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I read that years ago, and if I
Warlow's
remember correctly, it said that 90% of the people that you collaborate with, buyers, 90% will not buy.
Yeah.
They will never buy. 90%. If I talk to 100 buyers, 90 of those will never ever buy.
Right. They like to dip their toe in the pool, but they're never getting in the pool.
That's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah. Steve, you had a comment? I'm sorry.
Well, I've got some miscellaneous comments, but I had a flippant comment to
Yeah.
Ed's comment there. So I've got a small business for sale, and I've talked to those 90 so far. But miscellaneous comments. So if you pick up probably any book on referrals, it's someplace in there, it'll say, be helpful to your referring partner, be specific, say, hey, if you meet someone in this particular industry interested in XYZ, then be specific, help them out so that when they go about their lives, they know what the heck they're looking for.
Right.
Another miscellaneous comment, all the emails that Chad and I get from professional buyers, it's always the region they're interested in, the 1 or 3 industries.
They're very specific. They know exactly what they're looking for.
The EBITDA between X and Y and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Those are private equity groups that are very specific.
The financial buyers aren't as specific. The PE people are more specific. Yep.
Interesting. Go ahead, Steve, please.
Well, it just so happens, I was in I don't know if it was a useful webinar or not, but a webinar last night. And this is a marketing guy who, at least in terms of the offering, was suggesting to broaden your offer as opposed to niching your offer.
What was his rationale, Steve?
Well, the rationale, whether you can do it or not is another question, but the rationale was, the more you can offer, the higher value your offer is, and hence the more you can charge.
You know, it's interesting. I'd love to debate that person. You know,
Yeah.
everyone on this call can do a heck of a lot for a business, right? You guys can go in, you can define intent, you can understand, you can score capacity, you can create plans. But if you try to say that, from my perception, the challenge becomes, if you try to say, how do we end up not saying, well, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that? How do we protect ourselves from diffusing the understanding of the impact we can have That would be my concern, Steve. And this person is obviously intelligent and successful, and I'd love to hear their perspective.
Yeah, it wasn't such that I could get into an argument with him.
Although you were willing to try.
I was willing to try for sure.
And we can also specialize. We can say I work with X industry, or I support Y type of other advisor, or I guess I'm really great at planning and at creating strategic plans.
Yeah.
Or I'm really good at leading execution, or the point that Joe has made. And Joe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he's like, I'm really good at coaching in this types of industry, at coaching the leadership forward. Those specific. But it all goes to the same point that we're defining why they might want to make our phone ring, right?
Yeah. In terms of most, if not all of this, it's not just what we know, it's what we know plus the other people that we know, what they can offer. So there probably isn't a problem that a business owner has that we can't collectively solve.
Collaborative accountability and collaboration.
And Georgia, humbly, I just suggest this is where this conversation started. I was trying to help this block of the conversation, right? I was trying to help this guy at lunch, and my comment to him was, you're making it really hard for me to help you because you're not giving me anything. I got 3,000 or 4,000 people in my phone. I don't know who to introduce you to because you can't give me anything to grab onto. You haven't given me an industry. You haven't given me a function. You've said you could want to do this, but you could do that. I don't care what you do, but if you don't give me something, again, I'm going to put it in buyers. If you come to me and saying you want to buy a company, but you don't know the size, you don't know the geography, you don't know the industry, and you don't know the potential goal of it, how do I even hook you up with a company?
What's fascinating?
Yeah.
Eric, that is a great point. And how do we get to a place where a private equity groups a platform says, listen, I'm looking for companies with strategic capacity of 80 and higher, revenues of 10 million, gross revenues of 10 million, strategic capacity of 80 and higher. I'd like to, those are the types of people I'd like to talk to.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly good subset of a group. It doesn't have to be defined, to your point. It doesn't have to be industry defined or geographically defined. It could be defined by another criteria. But if you don't give me any criteria to define it, you're leaving the whole world open. And how do I even start as someone who's trying to help you, right? And again, that's why I picked on Steve and Chad, because you guys get this all the time. You get financial buyers who are coming in and saying, what do you got on your shelf so I can decide if I want to buy one of them, right? And I know that because I get those calls too, right? And they're not helpful.
Yeah, I would say probably the same with Chad, but the more sophisticated financial buyers that,
Yeah. I didn't mean to.
Right enough to know that, be a little bit specific.
Yeah.
And Tim, you have a furrowed brow.
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Me?
I'm sorry. I was doing.
Oh, you were okay, because I thought you were furrowing your brow with the conversation. I wanted to make sure you had a chance to.
No, I was just what I was thinking was, and I was making a note about it, is that if Mike was on the call, he'd be all over this.
Yeah, he sure would.
Right off the top shelf of his program is, who do you want to know? What is it? Why should I introduce you? Who do you want to know? And get real specific about that. And I think it's a great point. I mean, Eric's exemplifying that right now, and that he's being Mike, I mean that with a compliment, and that you're doing that with person that you're meeting.
You obviously know Mike.
Networking event.
Well, and also, Eric, a lot of times what I'll do, I will email them a series of questions before I meet with them.
Yeah.
Exactly some of those same type questions that you're asking. One of the questions I ask, have you been pre-approved, right?
Yeah. As a buyer, yeah, right. Same for a house, right? I don't want to talk to you as a broker of a house if you haven't even been pre-approved to buy one. Why am I wasting my time with you, right? Yeah.
Are you going to be owner operator, a silent partner, right? What industry experience do you have?
Yeah.
The timeline, right? What other industries have you looked at in the past?
Yeah.
If I can ask a series of usually about 5 to 7 questions, and if they cannot give me a compelling answer, that probably tells me that they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, good.
It's interesting. This week's blog post is about discovery, and a lot of what you guys are bringing up here are discovery points. Now, They're not, my article is about discovery with clients, but this is the same. We're interacting. Why is this relevant? What, how might we collaborate? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing with our clients, right? We're collaborating with them to help them reach their goal.
Yeah, I would almost say, George, that this applies actually really well to prospects to decide whether it's a qualification process that Chad's referring to from my question, which is exactly where I was trying to go. And I was trying to use a specific example to get the conversation going, because if you say to people, how do you qualify prospects? Everybody goes into I'm in an interview and I got to answer with the interview questions. I was trying to use a specific example that forced people to think about the problem rather than answer with the standard sort of off the shelf answer. Joe, I know you always have interesting comments on this, and I know you've been sitting there quietly, so I want to pick on you. Joe, did you have some comment to throw in here?
He may not be finished with his diagram yet.
Yeah, I know.
He's
trying.
still, where's the overlap when we have that conversation? So I have a list of 100 names, 100 companies in Central Ohio, and they're in they're in the construction and also manufacturing space. A local accounting firm that I've known this guy for 20 years or so, but they shared with me their target lists, right? So this is about having a new birth of us getting together. What is that? What are those concentric part of that concentric circle do we want to play in, and how do we talk about jointly marketing each other and going forward with a two-punch? Because if we're able to go in there referring each other, it's amazingly door opening, right? And so we got to figure out how to that. Once again, going back here, borrow your car. How do we have that joint venture? It's not about I want to be introduced to your clients. We'll get around to that. But what about if we could go to the new client base that you're trying to capture and be a co-marketing effort? So Ed and I are going to go to this firm and present our process, right? The growth drive advisor process to a group of CEOs that are basically target, and I'll go pepper it with a couple existing clients just to kind of get that going. But the model, we got to build that trust to say it's about that growth that we don't have. And it's not that I want to get introduced to your existing client. That's too scary. But if you could help me acquire new business, maybe no harm, no foul. If we can get a better way to get in the door through each other's backing each other up, that's sort of what I'm thinking from reflecting on the comments we have so far.
Yeah.
Better, coming together is a multiplicative issue, not a swap clients issue.
Yeah,
Or a zero-sum game. Yeah.
absolutely.
Eventually, if we're doing good work, then we'll get around to being introduced to their clients, and that's. But
Yeah.
but too often we're kind of like, who do you know, and how can you It's like, well, let's look at our product together, and they're a mid-sized accounting firm that most of the guys, once they hit like about basically a $5 million mark, they're saying, I'm kind of outgrowing my one-man CPA guy, whatever, and I need to act bigger. And when they do that, they're open to change too in relationship to how getting coaching, because they're open-minded to getting a better, more complicated CPA support. And then that's the change method. You think about what are those tripwires that activate that, like in the CEPA training, they introduced the term they called events. But what is that happens in their world? Is it a local CPA firm that stand up and says it's a more complicated solution, and when a boner indicates they're going over to that, usually referred to by their banker, and then they go into CPA, and then they're open-minded to introducing something like the Growth Drive Initiative, and let's look about how we can grow this thing. But only then are they ready for the message. Student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Joe, that you say that, because I love all of the topics that are implicit here, right? There's defining our own services. There's approaching the market. There's identifying and collaborating with COIs. There is helping clients achieve their win. and the concept of discovery and qualifying and discovery as a qualifying journey. Really good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. If it's okay with you, I'm just going to do a quick screen share.
Please.
Let's see here. Sure. This is this week's blog post and talking about using discovery to identify, and this goes straight to our conversation, to identify, to carefully define, refine, confirm, cement strategic intent, and to invest whatever time is needed to identify strategic intent. When we think back of our 7 steps of our advisory process, circling back and confirming, refining intent periodically is so critically important, because what do clients do? They disappear and reappear somewhere else. And how does that strategic intent exist? Part of this may become a series of articles, but should we be doing this discovery alone? So imagine Eric doing this alone with a client, or Eric with Steve, who's an investment banker, or Eric with Peter Skelton, who's not on this call, or Larry Dietz, or one of our other superpowered wealth advisors, commercial insurance people. What would that meeting look like? And how do we discover intent within the context? It's within context, right? In context of, I want to take care, I have my own personal aspirations. I have my own bucket list. I have my family to take care of. I have my other stakeholders, my employees, my suppliers, my distributors, my community, my church. And then I have to look at my business's strategic capacity in the context of all the things I might want to do, of my intent, of where I want my destination to go. And all of that exists inside the market. You know, we have these rings. And how do we perform discovery that is deeply thoughtful, process driven, and is going to help us help our client, and also help us identify and collaborate with the right advisors? So I just threw a whole.
You know, right to Joe's comment, right to what you just said, Mike Garrison and I are calling on a potential client. I identified the client. I brought Mike in because he's a specialist in this area, and we're going after a client together. And guys, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm having more fun doing it with Mike than I've had doing it by just my team. You stretch when you have somebody else at your, when you partner with somebody who's at your caliber of, you get stretched in ways you can't imagine. And it opens your eyes to some things that you're used to doing it this way and they're used to doing it that way. And you got to find ways to do it together. All of that stuff is good. It makes you it's making me a better, he's certainly helping me on the sales side, because he's a trained salesperson. I'm a seat of the pants salesperson. But I'm bringing stuff to the table too that Mike's commented. He's learning some things, right? And so I just humbly suggest to you, one of the things that would be awesome from this group is to have more collaboration. Joe, you mentioned you and Ed are doing some things, right? I think that collaboration would be really healthy for the group. But also, George, I would humbly suggest to you that we should also celebrate those collaborations within the group as well, right? We should be talking about, hey, Eric and Chad went out and did this, or Steve and Ed went out and did this, or whatever, right? Like, that's a thing to celebrate as a community, because that's where the community can actually make us better, is the learning that we're doing together and the collaborating. We learn better actually when it's not just a theoretical discussion that we're having around the coffee machine, when we're actually out doing a job and we learn while we're doing it, and we make mistakes and fail and we have successes. That's where the real learning comes.
Yeah, Eric, 100%. That was actually Mike calling to apologize for not being on. He's very sick. Well, he's got a cold. He's not dying, but he's not well enough.
That was a commentary on his mental state.
But Eric, something I want to, guys, and it's so funny. I have challenged Catherine. How do we boost engagement? So we have, if you notice, this call is getting bigger and bigger and staying consistently 9,
Awesome.
10, 12 people. Love it. And at some point, we may want to spawn a specialty weekly or bi-weekly conversation. And that's up to you guys, right? You say, hey, George, this is what we want to do. Now, have I ever said no? No, this is all fabulous. But Eric, to your point, let's celebrate these collaborations. Chad just just dropped a big $27 million deal into the community. Ed and Joe work together. There are people in the community who are basically in a virtual firm together. They collaborate so much that they're single billing the client, right? Let's post, share us, live stream. You can do all of that here in Circle. I would imagine how vibrant the community, the next level of vibrancy and engagement, if we get in the habit of doing this. I mean, put it on our calendars. We're going to do this, once a week. So once a week, we're all getting together, which is one of my favorite
George,
meetings of the week.
part of my point was it's easy to come on the call and verbally spar about things and say, I believe this, I believe that. I find that I learn who people really are when we're in the middle of something and something isn't going so well and we gotta, right? Perfect example. It's easy to go out and play a round of golf when somebody's not playing well, you find out what their real character is like. Can they deal with adversity, right? Rory over the weekend, watching him at the Masters, can you deal with adversity and going up and down, and can you stick to it, or do you just lose your cool and drop out and not win, right? Like, can you stay there and stick it out? And that's the mental toughness and dealing with adversity and being willing to change and learn and adapt in the situation. And I'd welcome the opportunity to collaborate. Tim and I have talked about collaborating, right? Chad, Steve, I'd welcome the opportunity to collaborate with you guys on something, right? Mike and I are already doing that.
Well, I'll share, Eric. Chad and I had a discussion on one of his cases there last week, and I'm currently on a joint engagement with Teresa down in Orlando.
Awesome.
The client. So
Yeah.
she's got the lead, and I'm jointly working.
And you mentioned this last time that you are doing the right thing. That's another thing. We got to learn how to play second seat sometimes, right? We can all learn that.
Go back and look at Yes, Eric. And we go back and look at the advisor's pledge. Yeah, man. Yes. Go ahead. I think Silvana was going to make a comment. Joe, just one sec. Nope.
No, I'm okay.
Joe, you're on.
No, just continue to look at this AI and the multiplying, the rate in which this thing is taken over. It just boggles your mind, right? And it's staying unfolded. If we really look at what's going to be left in this world to be done, it's the human contact and the taking what was thought through, interpreting it and delivering it. And so as we look at our role going forward in the next really short, like 2 years, right? All this data that we're clumsily getting together, interviewing the client and all this stuff. I believe that's going to start becoming more and more accessible for a lot of people. And so you look at that, the last outpost and frontier that we've struggled with right now, even us with the best intentions, do not see us on the same boat together. We're all floating these little dinghies around, and some people have a bigger boat than others. But anyways, what brings us in the same boat together, and how do we have a shared sense of outcomes is really, you look at that AI coming our way, and how do we batten down the hatches and figure on how to play this thing out to truly have this powerful network. And I think, George, we look at this power of one network with the specialists coming together. And I put it in the chat. So growth driver community, bring specialists together, power of one network. So that interconnectivity is going to be something that can be defensible strategy going forward. The sooner we understand that the AI is going to drive everything out, whatever information we think we're so smart right now, we're going to be outsmarted by so it's the connections in the community, professional community, but also being able to then deliver it local. So we have the local relationships, but if we could tap into this, so we're on this line, we're on this phone. Ed and I just finished a call with but they were talking about their power of their network, and I'm trying to understand they're connecting 200 business members across this platform. They all want to have a technology play, whatever, a little bit of commonality. But they were pretty insistent that was the power they brought, is that relationship. So you got to really understand the last frontier is that relationships, ability for us to discern what AI is telling us and translate it into a believable message and build trust.
Yes. Let's put AI aside for a sec. It's a fascinating topic, one to which So I just met with a super smart wife, bumped into a guy. They started chatting. Turns out he's an advisor. He's been very, very successful, taking care of his stakeholders and his family. And part of what we bring, each of you, each of us, everyone in this community, the 170 members, AI can't do what we do, right? And I stood in that meeting, and as I say publicly all the time, business owners also can't do what they need to do without us. I believe that profoundly. The reason our phones ring, right? The reason that their wealth advisor calls us and says, hey, we are, even in an AI world, or maybe especially in an AI world, AI can't do what we do. AI can't think truly. There's some really cool agent, and that's our strategy, right? We are the agents of change. And I don't know what the point I'm really making, but the power of this community is incredible. And I'll close with one point. We're having a conversation right now. I'm having a conversation with a few wirehouses. I'm also having a conversation with a couple of thought leaders who touch thousands of their in-profession colleagues. And the C3D, the reason we created C3D, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the key benefits is that we're able to go to, let's pick a wirehouse, a CPA firm, an investment bank, and say, if you are looking for someone, if you have a client who cannot get from stuck to best in class, right, from where they are to where they want to be, here's why a C3D is a defined, quality assured collaboration. And it's a super powerful message. So I got to where I was trying to go by a roundabout route, but I hope you guys, does that point resonate? Does that make sense?
I have a Captain Obvious statement.
Please, Steve.
So we all know what an LLM is, ChatGPT, Claude, blah, blah, blah. That's all this is a real LLM.
Yeah.
It's the collection
It's a
of
great
knowledge in this room, period.
Yeah.
I have a guy I follow who happens to be in the sales function. I heard him a long time ago in a Vistage group that I was in and speak, and I got on his newsletter, and he sent stuff, and he writes a lot about AI in the sales space, and his formula is artificial intelligence, AI plus GI equals real intelligence, and the GI is genuine intelligence. And so it's not AI versus people. It's AI is a tool, and we leverage it to make things better. Right. And so you still need somebody. Look at how many times, if anybody who's used AI for a bit will realize there are mistakes in it. There are bad assumptions in it. There are all kinds of things. And so you need somebody to actually review it. It's a little bit like a college student who just graduated. They know a lot of stuff, but the application of that stuff to a real live problem is a whole different thing. Right. And so you need the partner level person to review the associate level stuff, because they're going to say, whoa, that, really good idea, but that's not how it works in real life. Right. And so here's how you do it. Right.
APT did a market briefing. I think it was yesterday or the day prior. It must have been yesterday. And Eric, it was exactly to your point. Like, yeah, we're really good, and we're about to release Model 41, but we still have hallucinations. We still have, these problems. And the new coding algorithm that they're releasing, they're like, well, it's cool, but to your point, Eric, it's sophomoric, right?
Yeah.
I'd
still like to see the algorithm that takes programmatically takes 1 + 1 = 3, right? It's really good at reading a lot of stuff and making connections between things, but can it really bring up something that's truly innovative that nobody's ever thought of before? How does it do that, right?
And that's, that's a fascinating topic. Guys, hard to believe. We've just chatted for an hour. Could we, I have to jump off. Could we run around the horn, if that's okay with everyone, and just do a key takeaway from today? Would that be cool? Awesome. Thank you. Nobody said no, so I'm just going to take that as a yes. Anybody in a hurry to get off? Okay, great. Chad, you're up in the you're in my Hollywood Squares to the left of me. Key takeaway?
No, I think it's a great reminder of the team that we have in the circle.
Awesome.
Just how to be able to leverage off of each other and, and help each other grow. And Ed, thank you again for your time last week. Very, very beneficial. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. Chad, who are you going to toss it to?
Go for it, Eric.
Yeah, my key takeaway continues to be the same almost every week at a generic sense. I need this group because as much as I think I've got over 30 years of doing this and 16 years of doing it, learn something every single freaking time I'm on this call and somebody challenges me or says something and I'm like, wow, that's really good. So rather than the specific, I'm going to be more generic. Rather than the specific of this call, I'm just reminded every time I'm on this call how great it is to be around other smart people and learn things.
Amen. Love it. Thanks, Eric. Eric, who are you going to toss it to?
I'm going to pick on Steve.
Well, I'm going to be redundant, but I'll be quick. Just leverage the power of this group.
Yeah.
Since Tim is next to me on my screen anyway.
Thanks. Yeah, I love watching the collective awareness and potential of this group growing. Like every week, it's like getting better and stronger and bigger and more thoughtful and more potential and accomplished. And so it's rewarding to be here at this time watching all of this happen. I feel like I'm sitting with the original staff of Saturday cast from Saturday Night Live. Like so, it's great. Thank you all.
I want to be Gilda Radner.
To Silvana.
Second, everything you guys said piqued my attention. The idea of creating some learning moments and sharing among the group based on use cases. So I'm curious for what direction we're going to take that.
Yeah, 100%.
And I will pass it to Ed.
Thanks, Savannah. I think the emphasis has got to be letting everybody know that collaboration is beneficial because the collaborators often don't have all the expertise by themselves, but if you put two heads together, you then compound the one individual and performance because you get, instead of getting two, you're getting basically three because of the interactive capabilities of joining.
Yeah.
Let's see. How about pass it to Clay?
Clay, you still with us?
Clay's muted.
She-Man had to step away. Joe.
You're muted, Joe.
He's got it. Yep. The power of one human AI.
Right. So essentially we all have our specialties, right? And we're all trying to become more generalists. I mean, we're trying to get away from the doing part, the CPA that you might want to be or was. You're trying to be a recovering attorney or whatever. I think Tim's case is a recovering CPA. But what we want to be able to do is bring this specialist together into the power of one. And can we redefine AI as human AI?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so with that becomes, if that's the goal, and I don't know if it is, George, I don't know, but there's certainly things that we could do from a technology, share technology that we're kind of like letting it go and it's not a priority, and that's fine. But if it is truly what we want to do, then I think that's the strength of the community, and communicating that to prospective advisors could work out.
Absolutely, Joe. And it probably won't surprise you guys that the next on our release schedule is, for clarity, is enhanced ability to collaborate among advisors. That was great. My key takeaway, I'm rereading the Culture Code. If you have not yet read it, guys, if you read the first 6 pages, I'm guessing, you'll read the whole book. It is fascinating and touches on everything we discussed this morning. It's a great read.
Or Teresa Gulino.
Okay. The power of this community, guys, collaboration. I love it. This is such a great meeting. I want to thank each of you for investing an hour and participating. It's great. And we'll keep growing and going. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week. We're here and happy to help.
Bye, everyone.
If you need anything, let us know. Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by the Growth Drive Summit. Our theme this year is building a profitable advisory business. Join us in Charleston, South Carolina, October 6th, 7th, and 8th. Expand your network, learn new skills, and generally have a good time. This is a top-rated event. We're looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.